I woke up that morning feeling wrong. Not the usual groggy, just woke up wrong, but an unsettling, impossible kind of wrong, like the world had shifted while I slept. I rolled over, rubbing my eyes, and froze. The reflection in the mirror across the room didn't belong to me. Not really. It looked like me, yes, but softer, smaller, more delicate. And then I realized, I wasn't looking at a stranger. I was looking at her. My twin sister. Her long, glossy hair framed a face that was eerily familiar, yet subtly different. My jawline was sharper, my shoulders narrower, and my hands, delicate, feminine, unmistakably hers. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my chest, unable to comprehend what had just happened. What the hell? I whispered, my voice higher, lighter, distinctly hers. My own words sounded alien in my mouth, carried by vocal cords that didn't feel like mine. I reached up, fingers brushing my face, tracing the soft curve of my cheeks. The skin was smooth, warm, real, but not mine. I tried to scream, but only a soft squeak came out. Panic surged. I ran to the bathroom, turning on the light, gripping the sink so hard my knuckles went white. I stared at the reflection in the mirror, her eyes staring back at me, wide, confused, terrified. Every feature, every expression, every tiny detail was hers, down to the freckles I had teased her about last summer. How is this possible? I muttered. My mind raced, trying to find logic, any explanation. Was it a dream? A hallucination? Some cruel cosmic joke? But everything felt so tangible. The weight of my body, the brush of my hair, the subtle sway of my hips as I shifted unsteadily. I sank to the floor, breathing heavily, listening to the eerie silence of our shared apartment. And that's when I realized. I wasn't alone. I heard the front door click. My sister. She would be home any minute. And she, was trapped. The moment she walked in, my panic spiked. She looked at me, or rather, at herself, and froze. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's me." I wanted to scream, to explain, to beg for answers, but my lips moved in her familiar way, her soft voice carrying words that weren't my own. This can't be happening," I stammered, but it came out in a tone too melodic, too light. She backed toward the sofa, her hands flying to her face, mirroring my own panic. We spent hours in silence, circling each other like predators, hesitant, scared, unable to touch or speak without fear. It was horrifying. And yet, there was a strange, creeping curiosity. I kept glancing at my reflection, tracing her features, marveling at how perfect they were. Not that it mattered. I was trapped in her body. The next day was even worse. I had to leave the apartment. Our world didn't pause because my identity had been stolen by some twisted fate. I had to go to school, interact with friends, face the world as her. Every step outside was a nightmare. The way my legs moved, the sway of my hips, the gentle tilt of her shoulders, it felt unnatural to me, yet instinctively correct. People greeted me warmly, calling me by her name. "Hey, you okay? You look different today," one friend said, and my stomach twisted. Different? Yes. Terrifyingly different. I tried to speak, to answer in my own voice, but it came out hers, soft, lilting, melodic. I stumbled over words, feeling every eye on me, scrutinizing, judging. I could feel her personality leaking into me, memories flashing, inside jokes, habits, little quirks that were hers, not mine. I wandered the halls of our school, trying to act normal, trying not to panic as classmates whispered, laughed, complimented. And all the while, I was learning. Her body, her voice, her presence. It demanded an authenticity I wasn't prepared for. Each glance in the mirror was both terrifying and fascinating. By the afternoon, exhaustion had set in. I found an empty classroom and collapsed into a chair, staring at my reflection in the window. I barely recognized the girl looking back at me. Her hair tumbled over my shoulders, her eyes sparkled with life and mischief that wasn't mine, and her small, elegant hands rested nervously on the desk. I didn't know how to move, how to speak, how to breathe without feeling like an intruder. That evening, back at the apartment, I started experimenting. I had no choice. If I was stuck as her, I needed to understand her body, her movements, her expressions. I tried walking, adjusting my posture, testing the sway of my hips, the tilt of my head. I practiced her voice in the mirror, repeating phrases she often said. I even tried her favorite gestures, twirling a lock of hair, fidgeting with bracelets, tapping fingers lightly on the counter. It was surreal. Terrifying, yet addictive. I began to notice details I had never appreciated before. The softness of her hands, the subtle curves of her waist, the way her body naturally drew attention. Every small discovery was exhilarating and humiliating at once. And then came the clothes. I slipped into her favorite dress, a soft, floral pattern, light and flowing, and stepped into her heels. Every inch of my body screamed awkwardness at first, but gradually, I began to move fluidly, instinctively. The dress swayed perfectly, the heels clicked with an elegance that I had never known. I caught my reflection and paused, breathless. I looked beautiful. Her. Not me, but undeniably her. Days turned into a routine of survival and exploration. I had to navigate her life while trapped in her body, each interaction a delicate performance. Friends expected her personality, teachers expected her mannerisms, and strangers, they expected the girl they had always known. Every misstep was a panic attack waiting to happen. One wrong word, one unfamiliar joke, and the illusion could shatter. And yet, I began to understand her, see the world through her eyes, feel the subtle joys and pressures she carried. I realized that being her wasn't just about looks, it was about presence, about confidence, about understanding the nuances of movement, speech, and emotion. I started venturing outside more boldly. Coffee shops, parks, even the mall. I tested interactions, practiced conversations, experimented with smiles and gestures. Strangers smiled at me, sometimes lingered in curiosity. I felt eyes on me, and for the first time, I understood what it felt like to hold attention effortlessly. The fear was still there, but it was mingled with fascination, even a strange sense of empowerment. Weeks passed, and I began experimenting with her social life. Parties, gatherings, small hangouts, I attended, acting as her, speaking as her, moving as her. The experience was intoxicating and exhausting. I laughed at jokes she would laugh at, gestured the way she gestured, felt the thrill of being noticed, admired, and even envied. Each success built confidence, each failure taught humility. And then came the confrontation. A friend of hers approached at a cafe, squinting, confused. "Wait, are you okay? You seem different today." My heart raced. Could I slip, expose the truth, destroy the illusion I had built? I froze for a moment, the world narrowing to the pounding of my heart. And then, I smiled. I tilted my head, adjusted my hair, and said in her voice, "I'm fine. Just feeling a little different, I guess." The words were hers, but the choice was mine. I realized in that moment that I had a decision: hide, panic, return to fear, or embrace this life fully, step into her shoes, literally and figuratively, and claim the space I was occupying. That night, I stood in front of the mirror, fully embracing her identity. I adjusted the dress, ran my fingers through her hair, and studied every detail of the reflection. I wasn't me anymore, not fully. I was a blend, a collision of self and sister, trapped but learning to live, learning to thrive. I had discovered confidence I didn't know I possessed. I had learned to navigate a world with grace, charm, and elegance. I had found empowerment in the body I never thought I would inhabit. And when my sister finally returned, we shared a long, silent moment. She saw me, truly saw me, and smiled, not with judgment, but with understanding. "You look like me," she said softly. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady, calm, confident. "And I'm learning to be me, through you." We laughed quietly, and in that laughter, I realized something vital. Being trapped in her body had forced me to see myself differently, to explore courage, grace, and authenticity in ways I never could have imagined. The following weeks were a balance of adaptation and empowerment. I attended school, social gatherings, and even family dinners as her, slowly learning to move with confidence, speak with ease, and express myself without fear. I discovered joy in gestures I had never considered, laughter that felt natural, and a subtle beauty in the body I had once envied. By the time the ordeal ended, the experience had transformed me. I had been trapped, yes, but in that trap, I found freedom, the freedom to explore identity, to embrace empathy, and to understand the delicate balance of vulnerability and power. Looking back, I realized that sometimes, the greatest lessons come in the strangest forms. Being trapped as her twin wasn't just a nightmare, it was a journey into courage, confidence, and self-discovery. And I emerged, not just as me, or as her, but as someone who understood what it meant to truly inhabit a life, a body, and a perspective with grace, confidence, and authenticity. Because sometimes, the hardest transformations teach the most enduring truths. The first few days alone in her body were terrifying. Every movement felt foreign, the tilt of her hips, the sway of her shoulders, the subtle weight distribution that I had never noticed before. Even simple things, like walking across the room or lifting a cup of coffee, made me hyper-aware of every inch of myself. I kept catching my reflection in windows and mirrors and flinching, seeing her face, her body, and not my own. But soon, necessity forced me to start experimenting. If I was going to survive in her life, I had to learn how to move like her, talk like her, even think like her. I began with the small things, mimicking the way she gestured when she spoke, testing her vocal pitch in front of the mirror, practicing her laugh, her subtle smile. Every success was thrilling, every failure mortifying. I spent hours alone in her room, rifling through her wardrobe, feeling the fabrics, studying the way each outfit fit her form. A soft sundress caught my eye. I hesitated. Stepping into it felt like trespassing into her life. But the moment I slipped it over my shoulders, I felt a strange exhilaration. The dress hugged the curves I hadn't thought I possessed, and I couldn't help but admire the reflection that was both hers and, somehow mine, now. Then came the shoes, heels, flats, sandals, and the first time I tried on a pair of her taller heels, I almost toppled over. But each wobble taught me something new about balance, posture, and confidence. I practiced walking, turning, even sitting, paying attention to the subtle ways her body moved naturally. My muscles ached, my mind spun, but I was learning. I was becoming her in the way only someone trapped in her body could. Makeup was the next frontier. I had never experimented much before, but her collection was extensive. Lipsticks, eyeshadows, blushes, and brushes lined up meticulously. I started small, dabbed some moisturizer, applied a light powder, then moved to eyeliner and mascara. Watching the reflection, I could see my features transform. Her eyes seemed brighter, her cheekbones higher, her lips fuller. Each stroke of the brush was both thrilling and terrifying, like I was stealing a piece of her identity, and yet, also discovering a part of myself I had never accessed. At first, I felt ridiculous. I laughed nervously at my reflection, mimicking her expressions, trying to imitate the effortless elegance she carried. But slowly, a sense of empowerment crept in. I was learning how to inhabit her body fully, to explore the way she moved through the world. The awkwardness began to fade, replaced by a tentative grace. Food became another revelation. I noticed how delicately she ate, the way she held utensils, the subtle elegance in her gestures. I tried to copy it, almost obsessively, and it felt strange but strangely empowering. Everything I had ignored about her life, the nuances, the habits, the minute details, suddenly mattered. I was living them, experiencing them, and in doing so, I was discovering empathy, understanding, and a growing fascination with the life I had only observed from the outside. Then came social media. Her messages, her posts, her friends' comments, they were all part of her world, and now, part of mine. I experimented with replying as her, carefully choosing words that felt natural, trying to mimic her tone and personality. Each interaction was nerve-wracking. A single misstep could reveal that something was off. And yet, every time someone responded positively, I felt a rush of validation and growing confidence. One night, alone in her room, I tried something bold. I put on a dress she had saved for special occasions, applied makeup carefully, styled her hair, and stood in front of the mirror. I didn't just see her, I saw me inhabiting her form. I could feel the subtle changes in my posture, the sway of my hips, the lift of my chin. For the first time, I felt almost at home, almost confident, almost like this wasn't a trap, but an opportunity to explore a side of myself I had never known existed. I whispered to my reflection, almost to reassure myself, I can do this. I will survive this. The voice sounded hers, undeniably, but the determination behind it was mine. And in that moment, I realized something important. I was not just surviving. I was learning, growing, and discovering a strength I didn't know I had. Even though fear and uncertainty were constant companions, a part of me began to thrill at the possibilities. I started venturing out carefully, walking down the street, testing small social interactions, learning how strangers perceived her body and persona. Every compliment, every curious glance, every smile added layers to my confidence. By the end of that first week, I had begun to see the potential. Trapped as her twin, I was forced to see the world differently, understand nuances I had overlooked, and navigate life with an awareness and grace I had never possessed. It was terrifying, yes, but it was also transformative. And deep down, I knew the journey was only beginning.